We're back.
We're back.
Episode.
We don't know.
I don't know.
We don't know. It's a blur at this point.
100%.
We've been doing it, though. We're doing it.
We're just
It's got more than
old-timers.
2 episodes.
Oh my gosh. What are we talking about today?
Today, we're talking about how to sell your house fast.
Super fast.
Super fast. With a caveat of, where you're located, average days on market.
The market will dictate a bit.
Yeah,
It's
but how
relative.
to sell it as quickly as you possibly can.
Yeah.
As quickly as we possibly can, because it takes a village. So
100%. Okay, I want to hear your first tip or insight.
Well, as far as the process goes, the first thing you need to do is get a home evaluation. Those are free. And, you just have a licensed professional come out, evaluate the home. I can do a lot with photos. And if there's data, right? Like if it was a brand new build and there's no photos online, and you bought it 5 years ago, I'm going to need to see it, and I can look at pictures, but it's when you actually walk in the home is when I can say, oh, this thing is slanting. Like,
yes, pictures can be very deceiving.
Absolutely.
So maybe they're a great starting point if you have to do it that way.
Absolutely.
But I think getting your foot in the door
100%
is the best.
So home evaluation, that's just going to be assessing, what kind of cabinets do you have? What kind of countertops? What kind of floors? What's the condition?
Yeah.
Some people have, 6 kids and 3 dogs and they've been living in their house for 5 years. And that's very different than someone that, is
Single
empty nesters.
in an A-type.
Yeah, exactly. Type
that's
A,
me.
meticulous.
Like the moment I
always cleans the
just
baseboards.
rubbing,
Yeah. So I like to go in. I will run a comparative market analysis. This is just going to look at, and it's really specific to your neighborhood. So this is something I try to tell people because they're like, the house down the road sold for, but if it's in a different subdivision, a different school district, it's not apples to apples. But I'll run numbers and take a look at it. That's the first step to just kind of have an idea. As far as getting prepared for selling, the first thing I tell people, do you have an idea of what it might be?
Curb appeal would be one of my favorite ones.
That's
actually.
a good one. The first thing I think of and that I tell people is to declutter.
Yeah.
I walk in.
Honestly, people should live that way. So it doesn't
Minimalism is the way to go.
I'm a minimalist at heart.
Absolutely. No, but it does matter for the photos.
Yeah.
And I tell people, if you've taken any time to look through real estate photos, like,
The best are.
yeah, the countertops don't need to have hardly anything on them. I'm like, you still live here, but make it kind of
barely.
look like you don't. Yeah. Now closets are fine to be full. Garages are fine to be full because people are like, get super stressed, especially when you have kids and you have, working from home, all of that. But really just getting, and it's a fun process for a lot of people because they're like, oh, I needed to clean that out anyways. I mean, when I say fun,
it's kind of like a forced.
exactly. It
decluttering,
kind of puts
yeah.
that pressure on you. Like, I needed to clean that out anyways. Because what I tell people is when you first walk into a home, it's how does it smell? Mm-hmm. How clean is it? And how does it feel? And if it feels cramped, you just can't tell how big the home is.
Yeah.
People can't visualize their stuff in a house when there's a ton of other stuff crammed in there. So sometimes I'm like, hey, maybe put that chair, that recliner that your husband loves.
Maybe too much.
And I was like duct tape on the corner because he's
it's,
had it since college and can't get rid of it. Like,
it might
maybe
be the
put it in
perfect
the garage.
excuse to get rid of it, though, at the same time.
This has happened too.
I would also say depersonalize a bit. So not only declutter, but like we don't need to see 10 family portraits per se.
Absolutely.
Your family is amazing. But not
Absolutely.
everybody needs to know about little Susie, and
Right.
every accomplishment ever.
And I tell people that's all relative. If you have 1 or 2, it's not a big deal. There's a lot of staging companies out there that you can pay to come stage your home. I always take that case by case basis.
Yeah.
And it depends on the market. You don't always need to spend the money. That can be very expensive. But it can be very beneficial.
Yeah.
So you really want to be looking at what's our current competition. So those are the active properties that are also for sale at the moment. That's your competition. That's not a comp because we don't know what that's going to actually close at.
Right.
So let's say the house down the street has been on the market for 2 weeks, just went under contract. It's listed for $500,000. well, we don't know if that's going to close at 500.
Yeah.
The appraisal could come in low.
There's a lot of variables that you don't know as the competition.
So we look at those active properties to see how are they looking. And I like to actually go in those, schedule showing, just to see, hey, let's say these buyers are looking in this neighborhood. They're going to look at this house, which is valued here, but maybe it has an extra bedroom.
That's going to help in negotiation, potentially even.
Yeah, exactly. So, but decluttering goes a really long way. If you need to hire a staging company, you can. And it, once again, it also depends on the caliber of home and all that.
Yeah, I would say staging probably works really well for people that have no idea where to start, or maybe your agent doesn't even know where to start. Because I think a lot of us have the ability to make our home look better. We maybe just don't take the time because we are busy or we're comfortable. But staging is an expense. And like you said, sometimes it's really worth it. But if you already have the ability, then just pack some things up.
Rearrange.
Yeah, make your rooms open as possible. You want people to be able to walk through the rooms pretty seamlessly.
Yeah.
The whole point is to be able to allow your visitors, potential buyers, to see themselves in your home.
Exactly.
And see their own furniture in your home, see their items. So I love that tip.
Little things too, like getting a thing of flowers for the table, having, you know, some succulents are always nice. Like having a diffuser going, those kind of things. Some people will put music on in the background. Some of that, I've walked into some and I'm like, wow.
Mood music.
Extreme. It's like beach vibes and they have like, you know, anyways,
has
like by their pool.
Has that ever sold the house?
No, it doesn't sell the house. It adds to the experience of the showing, I would say.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and then curb appeal is another fantastic, you know, if your landscaping is pretty terrible, your plants are all dead, it's not to say that we can't go ahead and put the house on the market and try to sell it. And I tell people, you also want to look at what you're spending, because you may or may not be getting dollar for dollar back what you put into it, right?
Yeah.
Some people are like, do I need to repaint my house? And I'm like, well, no, because what if the new buyer comes in and they're like, well, we're going to paint that pink anyway because we're, you know, little Susie's coming along, right? So
Susie's just making
Susie
guest appearance today.
No, but I think like oftentimes people feel like they need to do more than they actually do.
Not understanding that they're not going to get back in return.
Right. But if there's a big hole in the door and the door needs to be replaced, you know, sometimes I'm going to say, let's go ahead and get that done. Just knowing with the outside of the property too, if all of your competition is immaculately maintained landscape properties with beautiful plants in the yard, you might want to put a little bit of money into that, just so that when people are flipping through photos, because this is number one thing right now, right?
That's how I would search for something.
Yeah, everybody gets on Zillow, even if they're not even sure if they want to buy yet. And if you're scrolling through and you see this house and then you see this one and the outside looks like trash, you know, you're gonna keep moving. That's why photos really are extremely important. They also can be very deceptive, like deceiving, because people get in there with these wide lenses and you're like,
it's like artistic at this point.
Oh my gosh.
Honestly.
And I'm like, I thought this room was, and I always look at measurements because I'm like, especially if I know my clients have big king size furniture that they need to fit, I'm looking at the measurements of the rooms because they can get really creative with that. But it does matter as far as getting someone's feet in the door. You want the photos to look well. And so you do care about curb appeal. And you care about the way the lighting is. And like I said, once again, like just a bare minimum, not a ton of clutter, not a lot, you know, on the countertops and all of that. So
going back to the curb appeal, I think even practical, I hate to have to say this, but I've seen it a lot. Like if you're in the process of selling your house, keep your grass cut fresh. I've seen so many people maybe cut it right when they begin. But you get 2 weeks in, and especially if you're in the spring and when grass is growing rapidly, like it makes a difference.
Oh, it makes a huge difference. It doesn't look kept. And a lot of times investors will do that.
And that's going to translate to what else wasn't
kept
in the buyer's mind. Like that simple thing. It's even if you can't mow it yourself, like $40,
get
$50.
somebody to mow the lawn.
It's worth the investment. Another thing with you were talking about like flower beds, things like that. Honestly, if it's really bad, rip it all up and just put some mulch down. You can go to Home Depot. A bag of mulch is $2.50. I've done this so many times. Might have to spend around $100, but like just that sleek look of like there's mulch down, everything's clear. That's a really easy way. Painting your door.
Yep.
Making it modern, updating the lighting like right at your front door. It doesn't have to be anything extreme. Again, I'm talking Home Depot. Like it doesn't have to be a full remodel or anything. If you have an entranceway, declutter that as well.
100%.
You
Even
know?
the numbers for the house, like
Just
1,500, just go pick up some cute new ones or paint them. Because if they're all wonky and
Yes,
it's weathered some storms, you just want to have it looking really sharp, So I think all of that does play into it, especially when it's a little bit more of a market where there's more inventory, there's more competition.
Yeah.
If it's like, this is the only house in this neighborhood that's selling, like you don't have to work as hard at it. That's why you do need an agent that knows the market and can help guide you, because I saw a lot of real estate agents come into the market, get into the industry in 2020.
They were excited.
2021. Everyone's like, oh yeah, real estate's the best thing. And I'm like, yeah. And back then you didn't really have to work too hard to sell a house. You put it on the market and we'd have 50 offers in 24 hours over asking all these people moving here from out of state. That's not the case anymore. So I've seen a lot of realtors fall out, decide.
Which I actually think is a great thing for the industry. I would like to see
a
high level standard maintained in the industry if possible.
100%. And I tell people, I'm like, when I talk to an agent, 2024, 2023, I'm like, okay, you're a real one because you're still in this. Because I just did see a lot of people hop on a train because there was money to be made and there was a need, right? But as things have more leveled out and corrected, I've seen it where a lot of those have said, okay, I'm going to go back to my teaching job.
Okay, this is
But
fun.
it started to be where, I can't just haphazardly
there
throw
needed
this
to be a
up.
bit more skill set behind
And intentionality and
professional.
setting expectations with your client and all of that. I mean, I tell people, I can come over and I can give you an eye and I can tell you what to do.
Yeah.
You have to do it. And then you do have to maintain it. So let's say we put your house on the market that first weekend. I like to do open houses. I'm a big fan of those, or have someone, another agent do the open house. But I really think they're big, and oftentimes I'll walk in and the client told me they had it cleaned and they have it smelling good, and you walk in and you're like, oh, our definitions of that are a little different,
Maybe should have pre-screened.
Yeah, and one of the good things we do also have is agents can give feedback to each other. So I try to always provide that to other agents just to help the industry, right? Like I walked into this home.
Well, help the seller.
Honestly,
They're wanting
the house is great. It needs to be cleaned. There were bugs on the floor. It's an investment property. It's been sitting there.
Yeah.
Maybe you got it cleaned a while back and now there's cobwebs. That just doesn't feel good. And it's not something that's appealing to someone that's like, oh, do I want to make this my house? Like, am I home? And then there's cobwebs and, bugs on the floor. Like nobody wants that,
Just wanting to reiterate what you're saying. Like we talked about curb appeal, about decluttering, depersonalizing. And then what I'm hearing you say too is just clean it. Clean the house. It goes a long way.
Yes.
I know I even feel that way sometimes when I haven't maybe cleaned my house well in a couple of weeks and I start to clean it. I'm like, oh, wow, you do sparkle.
There it is.
When I get in here, it makes the room it feels larger. It just feels even more peaceful. That might be kind of an ethereal term.
No.
But like all of that goes into selling your home and cleaning. Again, if you don't have time, it's not that expensive to get somebody in there for the sense of you're selling an asset and making all this money. The return on it is going to be huge. Or have the time clean your house.
Yeah. And I say this, I mean, what I'm about to say sounds weird, but there is an energy that you kind of feel when you walk into a house.
100%.
And especially when you are scheduling 9 a day with a client, you can walk into some and it's like, it's a little chaotic, or it feels a little, I did one, I went in one the other day and there were 11 litter boxes
No.
Yeah.
It's an
No, I
automatic no
promise you.
for
I
me.
promise you. I texted my client. We didn't know where all the cats were. There were a lot. We don't know where they were. I was like, did they
they
take
put
them
them
out for
up
the
or-
showing?
yeah.
But it was just not, and the house was a great layout. It was a cool
Yeah.
area. It was not okay. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, you're going to have a really hard time selling that house because you had 11 litter boxes all throughout the property and it didn't smell good.
Yeah, I was going to say, even if you keep a litter, I've had cats, even if you keep it very clean, like you smell the litter.
Yeah, and
You can't help it.
certain people, like, cats freak them out or they had a bad experience as a kid with a cat. And so you just do
All these little triggers.
Yeah. So it really, really does matter. And I think also for a buyer, just knowing, like, they don't know your home. You know, oftentimes sellers are like, but we've lived here and we've had all these parties here and it's been so amazing. I'm like, they don't know that.
Yeah.
They haven't lived in these walls. Your job, you know, and your realtor's job, and if you hire a stager, a cleaner, like all of these things, is to create the best possible presentation. Yeah. Because I have also gone into I've had sellers that I've worked with where people walk in and they're like, it just feels so peaceful here, or it just feels like so joyful in this home.
And you really get to create that atmosphere as the seller for the buyers that are coming in.
Yeah.
You get to pair with your agent, potentially cleaners, mowers, whatever that may look like. But either way, another thing that I was thinking about, you've mentioned it several times, and I completely agree. You want to walk into a house that not only looks good, but smells good. Yeah. There's just one caution that I have. Sometimes people think what smells good is just extremely overpowering.
You do not want
or
that.
it's like a really specialty scent that maybe you love.
Yeah, no.
But not everybody loves the smell of, you know, like old socks. Have you seen some of those crazy candles? Oh, I'm just saying there's some crazy candles out there
It's
that
like the
you
Jelly
think,
Bellies that are like flavored weird, like, why do
I
you
made
feel-
people play that at my engagement party.
No, that's
It
terrible.
happened. But it's just kind of a word of caution to go with a very neutral, natural scent, and you don't want it to be
Overpowering.
strong.
Yeah, because you don't want people to feel like you're covering something up either.
Exactly.
And I've walked into some and it's like, you want it to smell clean, but you don't want like an overpowering smell of Fabuloso where you can barely breathe.
Yeah.
Because
I love Fabuloso.
but you're like, oh, I'm
Honestly,
breathing in.
some people even have reactions to those types
100%,
of scents,
yeah.
which you don't want them to have that type of reaction in your house for multiple reasons.
No.
But especially for, do they want to buy your house or
You
not?
want it to be on the lighter side, not overpowering. That's a really good. I have definitely walked in, and it's a deterrent for some people.
Yeah.
Some people are very sensitive to smell, and they feel like they can. I had one client. She's like, and her dad said he's like, you're like a bloodhound with your nose. Like she could just smell anything. She's like, there definitely was a dog here at one point, you know. But if it is overpowering, it can really take away from. They're not even looking at the house anymore because they're like, oh, you know, I got to get out of here.
They kind of just want to get out because they're so uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Really, really good smell or really, really bad smell.
Yeah,
Either way. That makes me think of animals though too. Lock up your animals if you can.
You need to lock them up or
Or
remove
take
them.
them off
It's
the
really better. It's better
property.
if they're off the property. If they're, and I always say this too, everything's case by case basis. I've also had people come in that are like, we are obsessed with their dog and can we add the dog into the contract, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm
I think
like,
those are special clients
yeah,
though.
it does happen. But, you know, overall, most of the time you want to have animals for sure crated.
Yeah.
If not removed, just because some people are scared. Some people have trauma associated with animals. Some people have allergies, and it can feel like where you love this, 15-year-old cat that's been in your family forever.
Yeah.
Other people, like I said, they don't have the same experience that you do. So you definitely want to be cognizant of people's allergies and all of that. Even like if they have kids walk in, like as from a liability standpoint, right? Like you don't want any accidental
It's just so much
injuries.
easier to take them
It's just
off.
better to have them removed or taken off the property.
Yeah.
For sure.
And speaking of that, I suggest taking yourself off the property.
No, that's a must. I tell
I
them,
haven't
get out.
had this as an agent, but when we were home buying, I don't know if you remember this, but we went to one home and the entire family was home.
It's the most awkward
and
thing.
it was highly uncomfortable to walk around their home and feel like I couldn't critically process.
You're not even really looking at the house the
Right.
same way when they're there. It's
100%.
awkward. You're trying to get out really quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, I watch it. The energy shifts immediately. I went into one with some clients just the other day, and there was a tenant there. And the tenant, it's not their house. They don't really care as much to sell. The landlord is wanting to sell.
Yeah.
And it was really not enjoyable. And my clients felt really uncomfortable. And after looking at the homes, I'm like, that actually would be a really, really good fit for them. And I think had the circumstances been different,
They may have gotten.
they may have had a very, the experience was awkward and weird. So I tell sellers, let's say you have a showing requested for 10 a.m., try to be out at least 15 minutes early. And, they don't take a crazy long time.
No.
But you definitely, if you're trying to come back, you want to make sure they're gone. You don't want to
Just
have that
as a
interaction.
seller, keep your goal in mind. You want to sell your house. So make those small sacrifices in the moment
Yeah.
to get the deal that
And
you
I've
want
had
done.
I've had crazy stories around sellers and buyers meeting and it not going well, and it's completely unnecessary. And that's why you have ambassadors working on your behalf and just kind of like that lead, because it just can be awkward.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's great. They end up really liking each other and bring the packages by. It can happen both directions, but for the showing process and the actual selling your home, sellers get out.
It's too much of a gamble.
Too much of a gamble.
And I think what I'm hearing with both of us processing through these things is a buyer and a seller, it's all experience from start to finish. Your house could be perfection for this buyer, but if they don't have a good experience in the midst of showing, not all buyers can overcome that. Some might be able to, some might be a bit more factual, or like an investor and they're like, I'm not really worried about how I'm feeling right now. I'm worried about the numbers or the facts. But a lot of people, especially ones that are looking to buy a home to live in, they're wanting an experience, even if they don't understand that. We're emotional beings.
Right. 100%. I mean, I would maybe correlate it to having an interview. You're not going to show up to an interview super sloppy. You want to put your best foot forward because you're in a sense like, hey, this might be a really good fit for you. It might be a good fit for me. And you want to be presentable. You want to have, your stuff together, right? Like if you want that job, and in a sense, you're wanting someone to buy your home, right? And I also will say this too. I have clients that can be very type A, very like, they think their version of clean is like 50 times more clean than most people's version of clean. And I have also seen having these conversations really hinder people where they feel like, I'm never going to be ready to sell my house. I've got kids. How can I ever have it clean enough? And so it's also not that you are aiming for perfection by any means, and kind of going back to what we've talked about before about like just taking action and moving forward. And that's why you have a professional help you along the way, but you don't always have to wait until every single thing is perfect. Because if you do, you'll never sell your house. And so there is a balance to this. It's funny when you speak to these things, like
They can go to extremes.
They can go to extremes because you have the people that are like, I do everything I can.
I need a year to prep my house, which
and
is just inaccurate.
It's not accurate. And I've seen that really hinder people. And then they come back to me 6 months later and they could have got more for their house had they sold, and just let that go a little bit. You don't want to be so sloppy that you're making a bad experience for someone walking in the door, but you also don't want to let your perfectionism hinder you from doing something, because I've seen that as well, where I'm like, listen, you don't need to be so concerned about the closets and the garage. People know you live here.
Yeah.
It's okay if your child's toy is sitting there for one showing and you had to get out the door and you had a crazy day and your mom called, and we're human beings.
Yeah.
And if they have a good buyer's agent, that buyer's agent can also
Speak to
help
that.
understand, hey, like this thing will be deep cleaned upon move-in, like
It's kind of like an 80-20 rule with
Right,
life,
right,
If you can
exactly.
80% get it where you need to be, but it certainly doesn't.
And
need
if
to be
your struggle is perfectionism, your the best thing you can possibly do is let go a little bit. And if your struggle is
perfect.
you live in chaos a little bit more, then where you can grow is to be more prepared.
And I would say, like, lean on your agent, especially if you have a great agent. If you're a little bit unsure about, okay, at what level do I need to be painting or remodeling or updating, things like that, you want to lean on your agent and say, hey, what rate of return am I going to get here? And also, does this feel good? Like, will you come walk the house? I cleaned it. I did all these things. Does it feel like it's ready? Again, if you don't have a great agent, that may not be as helpful.
Right.
But I'm going to make the assumption that you found a good agent that has your back. I think that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just as a reference point.
Yeah, I'll have people, as they're decluttering, they'll send me a video and they're like, Betty, should I, what do you think about this? And I'm like, oh, I think that looks great. Or like, do you have a plant you could throw right there? I'll kind of guide you along the way, for sure. And if you have somebody that will do that, that's very, very beneficial. Because like I said, sometimes people are like, oh, well, do I need to take down every single picture? And then there's a bunch of holes in the wall and nail holes, and that actually looks worse.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you could leave a couple of those up.
Yeah.
You don't want it to look sterile.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Agreed. I mean, you still want it to look like a home.
Yeah.
But for sure. Okay, so we've really prepped the home, I feel like, at this point. There's got to be some other things people can do, though, in partnership with their agent. Like, I'm thinking marketing-wise, open house-wise, pricing things right. Do you want to talk about any of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always tell my clients, it depends on the client, but throw the listing up on your social media page.
Yeah.
Throw it up on your Facebook, because a lot of times people, your neighbors, right? Like they're coming to the open house because they are like, maybe my mom wants to live here because, we just had our fourth kid and I would love if my mom was closer. And I see that happen all the time. And a lot of times the sellers can really help promote and bring, obviously that's the agent's job, but everybody's on the same goal here. And I've seen it be very beneficial to throw it up on, share the link on their Facebook or go to their, tell your coworkers like, hey, we're selling our house, having an open house this weekend, you guys should swing by. I think as much as a seller can do to kind of get in there with you, it doesn't hurt anything. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Sorry.
It's okay. What was the other thing you said?
My thought was too, with like an open house, you mentioned this almost right at the beginning, but having an open house right when you list too, because you've got that new momentum, right? You're just on the market. Yeah. If people have been looking for a while and they haven't found something, but they see something new pop up. So I think it's really important that you have an agent in your corner that's going to utilize those first few weeks on market.
Yeah, that's when I tell my clients, this is when your house pops. Yeah. The first few weeks of the market, and specifically the first few days. So a strategy that I like to use as often as possible, I try to get it on the market by a Thursday evening to Friday. Thursday is preferable. For photography, it usually takes 24 to 48 hours. You have to do all the listing input in the MLS, the multiple listing service. So that takes some time. So often I try to get the photographer out by a Tuesday, so we're ready to go live by Thursday so that we have some time to advertise for an open house that Saturday or that Sunday. And so you definitely want to utilize those first couple weeks on the market for an open house because, like I said, it's brand new, it's fresh. Yeah. Like a lot of times when you do an open house, often you just get nosy neighbors because they're just like, I've always wanted to see what
nosy neighbor.
People who
100%. It's so much fun.
They're like, I just want to see what it looks like inside of there, right? So, but they can go back home and tell their sister-in-law, I have the house on the streets for sale, and I've seen that be very beneficial. But you definitely want to utilize, and I tell people, be prepared, specifically that first couple weekends and weeks.
Yeah.
Depending on average days on market, we look at that, but be prepared to get out of the house at a moment's notice. Yeah. You can set a showing where
have go bags.
Yeah. You can set a showing
about to give birth.
100%.
Just have one of those go bags.
Just have it ready to go. But yeah, you can set it where there's like an hour notice, but you don't want to deter showings.
No.
So you don't want to be like, oh, we're not going to let anybody in here from 2 to 4 because Susie's napping.
Little Susie.
I'm like, I know that your daughter needs a nap and I get that, but you want to just, that's why you want to
sell your
set
house
the
as well.
expectations.
Nap in the car.
Yes, or take her to someone else's to that day if we're just going to hit the market. Yeah. And there's not a way to know how many showings are going to come. We can look at, okay, more than likely we'll have quite a few this first weekend.
Yeah.
But things affect things, right? Like the weather, let's say it's all of a sudden drops and it's freezing cold and rainy. People aren't getting out looking at houses.
Yeah.
So things can always shift, but you want to be really prepared that first little bit when the house has just hit the market. It's fresh, it's hot, people are interested,
Yeah.
and you want to utilize that and not deter showings. And you also, like I said, want to be putting your best foot forward with the way it looks.
I agree. Let's talk pricing, because I feel like sellers can kind of shoot themselves in the foot sometimes when they just have to get the very most that they think that their house is worth, even though maybe their agent is advising a little bit lower number because they've done comparables. They've looked at the market. They've looked at the competition. And what I've seen happen is if it's priced too high, then it sits there a little bit longer than it needs to. But then that reflects, everybody starts to wonder why. Like, why is this house sitting here where had it been 5,000 less, maybe even 10,000, it would have been
that
gone.
is the name of the game. You really don't want to overprice. Like, you overprice. Okay, I like to give this analogy. My broker says this a lot, but let's say back in the day, and I'm going to use really low numbers just for math, but the house is worth 100,000.
Yeah.
You would price it at 110. Buyer would offer 90, and you would settle at 100,000.
Yeah.
Right. That's not what you want to do. You don't want to. That's not how it works anymore.
Yeah.
If you priced it at 97.5, you might get multiple drive the price up. You might end up getting 105.
Yeah.
Right.
Get a little bit of competition going.
And a lot of times, something else I do when I going to where we first started, have the home evaluation, I will pull the, tax records. I'm going to ask the seller how much they owe on their property.
Yeah.
And then I can also speak to them about the selling expenses and how much they would be actually walking away with. And like I said previously, like, just sometimes when people get greedy, they're like, I could get 5,000 more for this house, and then we push it.
Yeah.
And then the property sits there. And then by the end of the game, we've had to lower 20.
Yeah.
Whereas if you would have just priced it 10K lower in the beginning, we probably would have got that, right? And from an appraisal standpoint, they're going to be looking at days on market as well. So the longer it's been sitting on the market, it does matter in their evaluation of the home as well. So it's just one of those things I tell people, the best thing you can do is price it competitively. You don't want to be giving away the farm, right? Like, you don't want to be just like someone pricing it way too low. That does happen as well. But I've seen, if you get a little greedy, it can kind of turn around and bite you,
That temporary greed can actually lead to a much bigger loss than was necessary.
Absolutely.
Which, again, why you need a good agent.
Yeah.
Because the agent is going to be there to advise you.
And I tell my sellers, I'll give you a range.
Yeah.
I'll give you my advice. At the end of the day, it's your decision.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are like, we really thought about it. We want to start here. Yeah. And then I just have to say, okay, we're pushing that a little bit. Another strategy is, if you're not really getting much action, you're not getting a lot of showings, I just tell people, hey, we can start there. It's not what I recommend, but we can start there. But just be prepared that if we're not getting a lot, within 7 days, we need to make a price cut and we need to have another open house. Because once you do a price cut, the property then repopulates like it's new, even though it's just a price reduction. Same thing when something goes back on the market. It's like, oh, that was there previously, but now it's back on the market.
And it might be populating in a different, when you're like searching, especially on like a Zillow or something, you've got a price range that you're searching with. Yeah. So if that price cut dropped you just a little bit.
Right. And you really want to think through those things as well. I tell people, even just with retail, right? Like something's not usually priced at $20, it's $19.99, and it's kind of a mental thing. But you want to think of that on the higher end too. So it's like, we're looking 500 to 750 or whatever. If you're at that 490, 99, you're missing that 500 mark. So you do want to think through those things. But oftentimes, if you can look at the price, have the seller, hey, let's think through this. We can try to shoot for this if we must. But most of the time, you want to just listen to your agent if you can, and do what they would say, especially if you feel comfortable in their skill set and their knowledge. But
and if you don't, I mean, sometimes you have to do like listing contracts and things like that, but find yourself a new agent, especially maybe before you hop into that contract, or if the contract expires. Like,
Yeah, once you've signed
there
a
are skillful
contract, you're
people
under
out there.
contract. But
Yeah.
you definitely, and you can have conversations with your agent.
Yeah.
I always tell people I've never had to do that. I've never had anybody
Yeah.
want to terminate. But I'm like, I
That's
want
because
you
you're
to feel
the
comfortable.
guru.
I want you to feel
Yeah.
comfortable. And if you don't feel comfortable working with you know somebody, I'm very much allow you to opt out of that, you know, but definitely it's important how you price the property. And just to kind of circle back with what we were talking about previously, curb appeal, cleaning, the way it looks, decluttering, depersonalizing, and then the price point, and being out of the way
Please.
for showings and animals. Have animals created.
Yeah.
Am I missing anything else?
I think you touched on it earlier. Lighting is important in the house. These are just little things, right? They're free for the most part.
Yeah.
Like turn the lamp on before
Yeah.
you leave.
Open the blinds. Absolutely. Yeah.
I would say a fresh coat of paint can go a long way depending on your house and situation. So that's not always necessary, but that's another smaller expense that can really make a difference if you haven't painted your walls in a while, or maybe you did have, you know, especially where we are here in Texas, you might have like an entire cross wall, something where you decided to, which is great.
Yeah.
But if you decided that was part of your decluttering and you kind of wanted to take it down, now you've got all the nail
Paint
holes,
that
like you
wall.
were saying.
Yeah,
So maybe
exactly.
repaint the wall, things like
Absolutely.
that. But I think if you start there, you've set yourself up for success in selling your home.
Absolutely. And the first step is to just get a home evaluation. Have an agent come look at it, give you their opinion. You can talk through numbers, see if you even can sell right now. You know, like I said, we've always go back to this, but you don't know what you don't know. So it always starts with that. And then you take it step by step as you go. So
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. Well, that's a wrap for today then.
Yes.
Let us
Hopefully
know
this
if
has
you
been
guys
helpful.
have any questions or any other thoughts or suggestions.
Yeah, if
on
you
that.
want to explore the idea of selling, like just reach out. Love to help you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Bye.